Good evening. My name is Couri Hay, and today we're at the Chelsea Hotel down on West 23rd Street. The Chelsea Hotel, home of Dylan Thomas, Thomas Wolfe, Virgil Thompson, and, in 624, Charles James. I met Charles about 10 years ago when I first came to New York and had a certain interest in fashion and in famous figures, people that had contributed a lot to the culture of the nation. And I was introduced to Charles James, in fact, just before his show at the Electric Circus, a great retrospective that Halston and Antonio contributed greatly to. My interest in Charles has built over the years, and he's helped me a lot in my own fields, been a great mentor, in fact, into my writing, and all during my education. He's helped me reading lists, books. He's been kind of almost a father figure for me in New York. A great man, a genius, a much maligned, well, it's a very interesting story, and we're going to knock on the door, and we're going to go inside, and we're going to look at his room, we're going to talk to him. This is the first of a multi-part series in which we're going to look into the life and the mystery of Charles James, his past, his present, his future. It's an exciting story. I hope you'll join me when we knock on the door and come inside and see what's happening. I hope they expect us. The long wait. This is not the only room that Charles has in the Chelsea. There's 618, 622, the workrooms, the archive room where masses of materials and papers have been built up over a 40-year career. Charles James, fashion genius, couturier, architect of clothes, whose work is represented in over 36 museums around the world. Maybe he won't be in. We hear Charles in the distance. Will he answer the door himself, or perhaps Homer Lane, his long-trusted assistant for many years now? Homer has been assisting Charles in the production of clothes. Yes, Charles does still design. Perhaps there are only 2 women today that can boast of wearing Charles James's clothes. Charles will tell us more about that. I think I hear someone at the door. Is it Sputnik, Charles's dog, clawing at the door? Who can it be? We hear the whispering inside. It's always exciting when I come down to the Chelsea, take a right from the elevator, and go down the 6th floor. What'll be behind that door today? Who knows? The excitement that lurks behind there, in Charles's mind and in the things around him. The place, as you'll soon see, is just littered with things. It's unbelievable, the masses of material that he's accumulated over the years. Sculpture, drawings, paintings, all sorts of fascinating things. We hear them stirring up. Perhaps trying to tidy up, though it'll be pretty much impossible to tidy up this room. He's lived here for, I think, 10, 15 years now, and everything is still here. The room has kind of grown organically around Charles. You'll see all that. On the walls, there'll be pictures of his family. There'll be pictures that he's drawn himself, fashion drawings, erotic drawings, sculpture of jewelry, papers pertaining to the problems at the Brooklyn Museum, the Everson Museum, all sorts of scandal and intrigue, of course attributed to. We hear them going. Should we try once more? We hear Charles has been getting ready for this film, I think, for the past 71 years, which will be tomorrow. 71 years old, Charles James. He's been getting ready for this. This, the final, and I hope definitive story of his life on video.
I'm eating a banana because my voice cracked.
All right. So at least we know that we are expected. As Charles gets ready to submit to the camera of Anton Perich. Okay. Okay, we're going to knock on the magic door. I'm not sure if I'm doing a quiz show, but we'll see if they're there now. Are you ready? Is Charles decent? Well, there's Homer. Hi, Homer. How you doing?
We've been expecting you. Come on in.
Oh, okay. You sure Charles is dressed and everything?
Oh, the light isn't on here. How come where you going, bro?
Charles, long the perfectionist, wants to make sure the lighting is correct. Everything has to be perfect. Charles's whole career, and the trouble, I think, with most of the career, the trouble in it being a business success, the trouble with it being a success with manufacturers where they could make a lot of money out of all his creative talents, has been for the fact that Charles is a strict perfectionist. And perfectionist. Are we ready? Okay, Homer's going to take us in. Homer, how long have you been with Charles now?
5.5 years, part-time, and Well, about 4 years full time, I guess.
Sort of seems like a lifetime, I'll bet.
Yes, it does.
Okay, let's go in.
Anton, yes. And when you finish that, come to the little school desk here. You see, okay. That's like keeping the wires out.
Wait a minute, Anton. Charles wants to fix something.
Do you see the proof behind the typewriter?
Yes,
Or is the lamp in the way?
I see.
Now you're going to go up to that wall. You have to use the ladder. Back again, maybe I can get the stick.
The ceiling where the paint's
Very
coming.
well. Furthermore, I'd like to type off and have some logic around every item, what every item is. C'est une jolie forme. And your own picture, pen in on. kind of in love with that picture, you know. And you've been very naughty. Get it very big.
I got it.
Hmm? Is it big with no white surround? And these are the family houses, by the way. And that's all the Everson gallery material. There's several hundred shots there shown.
Have those shots been masked for the TV? Is that what that pink is?
No, they were just somebody's shot. And this is very important to get. You see who it is? It's Churchill. And that's necessary to Couri later. Now, I want to turn it back to front because it's the Queen and only 1,000 were minted. See, I have a good view of my story. You will like it. And you will remember a lot of things I've forgotten. Right child was very bitter about this is a problem in mathematics which relate the movement of the body, its shape, in movement rather, to 4 rectangular blocks of a narrow width, but 3 times as deep. And on each side, you will see the plasticine seems to be 3 times the width of the narrow blocks in between. But it isn't. It's the same width, but because the contour of the body curves around to the back, it becomes, let's say, 2.5 to 3 times as broad, without actually the block being any broader. By that, we can analyze, really, the 3rd-dimensional calculations of a body. Now, these photographs, now, I would like to show that from more angles. How can we do that? You see that black and red side is in width as narrow as the yellow and white. It's simply that it's sliced off at an angle. And an angle makes it much longer. Books.
Well, again, now. Yes.
Those are books of Pascal's drawings. And a year before he committed suicide, he was in New York, where he had a studio on 14th Street and lived in a brothel in Brooklyn for 14-year-old girls in between. And he was the greatest influence on me of anybody in my life in the art world. He taught me what didn't count.
We are moving now to
Now, these are paper sculptures of dress designs. The center one is a template of the body, center front to center back. The bust is added because no woman that I've ever met has a bust in the middle of her breastbone. That one is particularly important. It shows a stiffened muslin which has taken the shape it was cut to have without any stuffing. It was made over Elizabeth de Cuevas. All of these were made under my direction by my assistant, Homer Lane, who came as a student from Pratt and victim of its curriculum, and has come to be the person I lean on for everything. He knows, I'm afraid, more than I do about a great many things. He can fit, cut, he knows all my art procedures. He understands third dimension. Grading, did you understand that one? That's a leg of a pair of German trousers, which are far better cut than any trousers in America. And that is another view of the leg. And those are made of paper, thin paper, laminated with linen and not stuffed, but taking their shape as sculptures. That little Tiffany glue pot was on my great-aunt's desk for some 60 years. That's part of my library, the part I reread because I know what's coming next, which is very restful. It includes Proust, Benson, Cavafy, a great many authors who normally wouldn't be thought to relate to each other. That box there is a calculation tax deduction. In other words, to point out to a patron what her help to me has cost because of the many things that I have caused to be given to her, which she gives away because they're desired by museums. And 34 museums have examples of my work. We're looking for one to give all the archives, which, by the way, the Smithsonian want, but we want them to be given with the experiments which are in these cluttered rooms, which represent a lifetime of work, and which Couri Hay is going to go into later, with the objective of finding out why these experiments are not put at the disposal of a student body of 10,000, richly, in schools, richly endowed, to teach vacuum and prepare people only really to plagiarize. One class, which I will discuss with Couri, asks students to trace illustrations out of old vogues, make up designs from them as near as possible like them, without knowing, of course, how to cut, and which they are permitted to show as their own at the annual fashion show, claiming to have created them. And that is the destruction of American creativity. This is a symbol, really, of life urgency. I don't think we need the glasses behind it because nobody connected with that object would be wearing glasses unless they were very old. Holston has wanted to buy this, but I felt he might put it to a wrong use.
You hope to have this made in brass?
Okay.
The hand is that of Mr. Couri Hay, who's going to discuss this at greater length later as it relates to the art of design. This represents a bundle of coach whips, which I thought would substitute rather for whalebone, which is no longer in the market. And the plastics don't work because they don't have a sort of spring. They take crinks. And I found that they were tapered and couldn't be used, so I hung them on the ceiling. And many people think it's a symbol of sadomasochism. But I would say that an artist's life is itself an example of sadomasochism without whipping. I bought these in Sam's umbrella shop in the 40s, which had one window, however, devoted to paddles, rawhide whips, everything. And these coach whips were part of, what do we call it? A whip with many strands, you know?
Cat of nine.
Yeah, the cat of 9 tails. But it had been cut short. They had been cut short, and I didn't know they were tapered. I thought it was the ideal thing to construct shapes out of. And later I found I couldn't. But I used to pass that shop going to the dentist. And I always wondered who the clientele was, and it was mainly mail order. Ready? Yeah. This is a collection of wax models which I made with the vain hope that the Couri Jewelry Company, which is obliged to do $30 million worth of business a year to break even, could use to work over, only to find out that they preferred to acquire their designs by looking in the windows of Cartier and Van Cleef and then copying what nobody really wanted anymore. And they didn't have the equipment to make third-dimensional models. So I continued it as an art collection. The drawings of it are in the Mini Foundation in Houston. The experiments include abstract forms and forms which are derivative or decorative, rather emblematic. Couri is going to ask me about them later, and I will select with him 2 or 3 to go over. Before Miss Peretti began to design jewelry, Holston brought her here, and she was entranced with these forms. They are not like her jewelry, but nevertheless she saw the value in my forms.
Charles, I was wondering if you could possibly tell me which of these sculptures you consider most important, And if you are in agreement with the museum directors, I know there have been many museum directors around the world who have found a great deal of importance in a lot of these sculptural shapes. Perhaps you could tell me which you consider most important and which they consider most
I'll
important.
ask you a question. Don't you think it is curious that museum curators of sculpture and jewelry should consider these models important and the industry disregard them?
Well, I think that's been long a case of many museums have had an interest that the commercial world has never shown, both in artists and both in sculpture and painting.
It shows later. It uses them later, usually when they can be got without payment.
How true.
Now, you asked me which I thought important. I think that model for a ring to be made out of ivory and gold is important. It's between a human shape and a knuckle duster. How would you describe it?
Exotic.
No, I don't know what that word means.
Is it to be mostly, the mass part of it would be ivory?
Yes. And the surface here, gold. This design, somewhat like an ibis, was to be made in platinum and lemon gold, welded together with bolts. That isn't welded, attached together. It's hollow underneath. It would be worn by man or woman as an emblem, possibly on a chain. But it could be on a pin.
Is that to be an amethyst in the corner?
Well, I tell you, the wax doesn't really relate to the final design, because some of the designs I worked out around this shape were filigree and pavé with little diamonds like feathers.